Hello, my treasures. It's time for some exciting Hearthstone news, including a new class. There's so much news that I'll probably separate this into either 2 or 3 videos, depending on how I'm actually feeling. This one is going to be centered around the new class, which should be to no one's surprise if you've been paying attention to everyone's speculation, Death Knights, which is a class that I actually played for quite a while in World of Warcraft as my main character. So it's really exciting for me to actually see them being added to Hearthstone, though I kind of would have preferred, honestly speaking, to have something like Monk instead, just for a more whimsical class in the game. But Death Knights are a fan favorite, so why not? And because Blizzard decided to actually try to encompass as much into the Warcraft Death Knights into Hearthstone as humanly possible, this is probably going to be one of the most complicated classes to actually learn as a new player. So it's not going to be the easiest to get a hold of right away, but it's going to have a lot of diverse deck building because of some of the mechanics that it has access to. The hero power for Death Knights is going to be Ghoul Charge, which summons a 1/1 Ghoul with Charge, and it dies at the end of the turn if it doesn't die in combat. This will also feed into the key mechanic of Death Knights, which is corpses, which generate every time whenever a friendly minion dies, though there are going to be some minions that this doesn't actually work with, but I think those ones will have printed on them, this does not generate a corpse. And this is going to be one way you can actually empower your individual cards by using the corpses to empower their effects. A rune system is going to be added, which is going to encompass the 3 original runes that Death Knights actually used in World of Warcraft, though nowadays, really, there is only 1 rune type in that game, unless you're playing Classic WoW. And at the start of building a Death Knight deck, you are going to be able to choose 3 runes. You could choose 1 of each or all of the same rune, depending on how you want to build it. And depending on what runes you actually have, it's going to limit how you actually can build your deck, because some classes are going to require a certain rune combination to actually include in your deck. Blood runes are going to be focusing on control, it seems, and manipulating life totals, including your own hero's maximum HP if you choose to use all 3 runes. And this means if you are playing a Prince Renathal Blood DK deck, you can get up to 50 HP if you don't have any ways to generate additional copies of this spell. However, 50 HP is still ridiculous, and it's going to be quite hard to actually kill a Death Knight, especially because Blood is probably going to have a lot of self-heal abilities too. Frost is going to be more centered around direct damage, card draw, and mana manipulation and freeze effects. This makes me feel like it's going to be more of the combo-oriented rune, though this is maybe a rune that's going to be required in most DK decks just because of the fact that draw power is always really, really nice, and if Frost is the only one out of the 3 runes to get any type of draw power, then Frost is going to be something that most people are going to want to include unless they want to actually rely on neutral cards. But as it currently stands, I think it probably will be the one that I want to play around the most, though the additional maximum HP might be a lot more fun too. And finally, we have the aggro/zoo type of rune, which is Unholy, which focuses around summoning a bunch of undead minions, summoning swarms of minions, and generating and spending corpses. We also are going to be seeing with the Unholy rune one of the fan favorite characters from Wrath of the Lich King that did not make his way into the original Knights of the Frozen Throne set, Lord Marrowgar, who is going to be one of the iconic cards for Death Knight, because he's such an iconic character with his Bone Storm. The one thing I'm curious about this rune system is that if you're going to be able to generate cards off of discovers or other random effects that give you cards that you can't actually use because you don't have any of the given runes that you actually need for each individual card, or if you are going to be instantly limited whatever cards you can actually use for your given rune makeup. Because if you aren't limited to whatever rune makeup that you have, and you can randomly generate some of the cards that you can't normally access, and you can still actually use them even though you're missing those runes, then that might be a really cool way to work around the fact that you can't have more than 3 runes and have some builds around doing something like that. Death Knights will also have a 32 card core set, which is double the size of any other class, to make up for the fact that they have a smaller pool of cards than any other class currently in rotation. We also are going to be seeing a very similar thing to what we saw with Demon Hunters, but for Death Knights, where you can actually unlock the 32 Death Knight core set for free. And we are also seeing a Path of Arthas set, which is going to be a bundle where you can actually get 49 cards, which are going to make up 3 Death Knight starter decks. Though if you do the big pre-order bonus, you will already be guaranteed this, thus giving you the most value for your buck, even though we don't know how much this is going to cost in the end. But with all the general Death Knight information out of the way, let's look at the Death Knight cards that were revealed today. Alright, for the first Death Knight card, we have Acolyte of Death, which is a 3-cost minion with 3 attack, 4 HP. After a friendly undead dies, draw a card. This is the perfect example of a good draw power support, while also only requiring you to run 1 Frost rune, though the other Death Knights aren't going to have access if you go to a pure build of either Unholy or Blood. I do think this card is probably pretty decent overall because it does have a pretty well-rounded stat line and isn't that high cost of a mana card. And it's very similar to Acolyte of Pain, which is a 1/3. Though I do wonder if you are going to be able to generate enough undeads in Frost for this to actually be good in a pure Frost build. But outside of a pure Frost build, I think this is probably pretty good for any hybrid build that you could possibly want to make. The next card that was revealed is Army of the Dead, which is a 5-cost shadow spell that requires 2 unholy runes that raises up to 5 corpses as 2/2 risen ghouls with rush. This is a perfect card to actually combo with the last one, as this will allow you to draw 5 cards at max if you need to refill your hand. And honestly, I think Unholy is probably not going to be the one that you want to play in a pure type of build, because it is going to be focusing on swarming the board with a bunch of minions using all your corpses. And if we are going to see most of the draw power being in Frost, if you can use it easily in combination with Frost, then something like this is going to be incredibly strong, might lead to some hyper aggro decks similar to what we saw with Demon Hunter when it first came out. The next minion revealed is a 2-cost 2 attack, 3 HP battlefield necromancer that at the end of your turn raise a corpse as a 1/2 risen footman with taunt. And I think this is one of the examples of cards that the token doesn't actually generate a corpse, so you can't get infinite advantage off of it. Sorry for anyone who was hoping for something like that. It does require 2 unholy runes, good for a swarming type build, as we've seen before with the previous 2 cards. Probably going to be shape out to be a pretty decent deck overall, I would say, doing a 2 unholy rune, 1 frost combo. The next card revealed is Blood Boil, which is a 5-cost shadow spell that requires 2 blood runes. As lifesteal, infects all enemy minions at the end of your turns. They take 2 damage. So this is an easy way to actually heal up, especially if you're going to get your max HP to 50 plus HP. I think it's a pretty cool control tool. I do think it would maybe be a little bit better if it was only 1 damage at the end of each of your turns, but cost maybe 3 instead of 5. Dark Transformation is the next card revealed, which is a 2-cost shadow spell that requires 1 unholy rune that transforms an undead into a 4/5 undead monstrosity with rush, basically allowing you to get 2 attacks out with the exact same minion if it does survive the first attack. Again, a really good aggro tool, I would say. It doesn't cost too much where you're not going to want to run something like this. This could, in theory, put enough board pressure on your opponent, or they can't actually deal with a 4 or 5 undead monstrosity with rush, especially because you could combo this with your hero power ghoul at turn 3, and a 5 HP minion on turn 3 isn't the easiest thing to deal with in a lot of decks. The next card revealed is Patchwerk, which is a 7-cost legendary minion with 4 attack, 6 HP, the undead tag, battlecry, destroy a random minion in your opponent's hand, deck, and battlefield. So we're seeing more hate for individual cards within your opponent's deck, thus trying to limit the combo decks that you can actually run. This might keep some of the combo decks a little bit further down in the totem pole if a, I don't know, deck slash hand control Death Knight actually comes into fruition. I love these style of decks to actually play when they're not actually the best decks in the world, but when they become the best decks in the world, they are horrible to play against because you're going to just keep running into them. I know one of my friends has a really big problem with Theatar in particular because it always ends up coming up, and this is basically just a way better Theatar or anything else that has a very similar effect. It does require you to run one blood rune, which isn't the hardest thing to do in the world. And we have seen some other blood support that only requires one blood rune, thus allowing you to run some of these in like a aggro deck or something else. Though I don't know if a one of each type of rune is going to be very powerful. I do think in a blood deck where you're trying to control, this is going to be incredibly annoying to actually deal with. Next card revealed is Corpse Explosion, which is a 5-cost shadow spell that detonates a corpse to deal 1 damage to all minions. If any are still alive, repeat this. Basically Defile, but a little bit of a weaker version, especially because it costs 5, and it also requires you to have 2 blood runes. The 2 blood runes, I don't think means it's going to be that big of a deal, but at the same time, I don't think either of the other 2 types of Death Knights are going to be able to run this. And because it does seem like Frost is going to be the combo variant of Death Knights, it would be really nice if they had access to some of these great removal tools. It really depends on how Discover actually is going to work as a Death Knight class as a whole. If the other types of Death Knights are going to be randomly generating cards like this, because if they can, then this might be a really great card in some of the other Death Knight archetypes that just randomly generate this off of something like a Venomous Scorpid or one of the other school teachers or so on and so forth. The next card that we had revealed, which is a 3 blood rune spell with 2 mana that gives your hero +5 attack, spend 3 corpses to gain 5 more, draw a card. So I was wrong when I originally said you could get up to 50 HP with this in combination with Renathal. You could in theory get up to 60 HP between this and Renathal, which is absolutely insane. We are seeing a little bit of draw power for a pure blood deck, which is really, really cool. I do wonder if this is going to be really problematic, and this is the reason why Blizzard said they were waiting until the new set came out to deal with Prince Renathal, because being able to get up to 60 HP without even having to generate any additional copies of this card is going to be very, very annoying to deal with, since we did see some lifesteal already, and I'm going to figure blood DKs are probably going to have a lot of lifesteal as a core mechanic to the class. Though it is kind of curious that I think we've seen more corpse synergy between blood than we have for unholy so far. I think the next card means we'll probably see as much corpse synergy between Frost than unholy 2, which is Defrost, which is draw a card, spend 2 corpses to draw another. It costs 2 mana, requires only 1 Frost rune, which means, again, a aggro-based unholy deck might be incredibly strong if they include a 1 Frost rune in their makeup. It, of course, has the Frost tag, and is probably a pretty decent draw power card for a Death Knight class as a whole. Really easy to get the conditions fulfilled, especially with your hero power, and you have other ways to summon a bunch of different minions where this could be easily just a draw too. If this actually repeated past the initial additional draw, then we would be in a really frightening position because we don't need DKs to have that much draw power. The next card revealed is Plague Strike, which is a 2-cost shadow spell that deals 3 damage to a minion. If that kills it, summon a 2/2 zombie with Rush. Basically a generic removal spell for unholy DKs. It only has 1 unholy cost, so we will have some access to direct removal in the other 2 types of DKs outside of blood, which is really nice from a deck building perspective because it doesn't pigeonhole you into just one style of deck per little archetype of Death Knights as a whole. I do think this will probably see a lot of play just because of the fact that it is only 2 mana and it does 3 damage and gives you some type of advantage in the form of a 2/2 zombie with Rush. And a lot of early game minions have a HP pool of 3 or less, and it doesn't require a honorable kill or anything. The next card revealed is Frostworm's Fury, which is a 7-cost frost spell that requires 3 frost runes that deals 5 damage, freezes all enemy minions, summons a 5/5 frost worm. You know, you would have expected them to actually learn from the Snowfall Guardian that something like this is incredibly strong, and I can't see a world where this doesn't see play. Sure, you're not going to be able to probably discount this in Death Knight since we haven't seen any type of mana sheet in the class at all. However, I think the next card actually is going to correct my statement there. If you have ways to actually get additional spell power and so on and so forth, I think this card would be incredibly good. The freeze all your opponent's minions while generating a 5/5 undead is also quite insane, just because of the fact that it does allow you to stall out the board so you can get out your key combo really easily. The next card revealed is Glacial Advance, which is a 3-cost frost spell that requires 1 frost rune that deals 4 damage. Your next spell this turn costs 2 less. This is what I mean by mana cheat from the last card. You'd think they would learn that mana cheat is always going to go wrong, especially if you have easy access to a bunch of spell power. It also really depends if we are going to see additional spell power or spell damage, whatever it actually is called, because a card like this could be incredibly broken, especially if you can get additional copies of it. Guild Trader is also a card that is currently in Standard, which I've been wanting to revisit for quite a while. I tried to make a Bash Warrior OTK deck work, but it didn't have enough A, draw power, and B, direct damage to do a OTK. But I do think this, in combination with some of the other direct damage that we have seen for Frost, will make a combo Frost deck really, really fun to play, but really, really frustrating to play against. The next card revealed is Gnome Muncher, which is a 6-cost, 5 attack, 6 HP undead minion that requires 1 blood rune that has taunt, lifesteal at the end of the turn, attack the lowest health enemy. I did say earlier that we were probably going to see a bunch more of lifesteal for blood DKs. This is the perfect example for it. I do think this is probably a little bit too high of a cost of card to see a lot of play. It really depends on what other minions that we are going to be seeing with blood DKs. It would be cool to maybe see a Vander blood DK deck right away, because I think this is the only minion that we've seen so far for blood DK as a whole, and Vander would be able to discount it to a 3 mana minion. The lifesteal is really nice, which is probably the reason why you would want to run it in the end, but it might actually just end up killing itself against one of your opponent's minions really, really quickly. Graveyard Shift is the next card revealed, which is a 3-cost spell that requires 1 unholy rune that summons 2 1/1 zombies with Reborn, thus allowing to feed into your corpse generation for Unholy. We still haven't really seen a big payoff for the corpse generation in Unholy, but this is actually pretty nice of a way to buff up something like Sire Denathrius, which is going to be extremely annoying in a deck like this. Sire fits so well in Unholy DK, it isn't even funny. Sire is not going to make it out of this expansion, mark my words, without seeing some type of change. Horn of Winter is the next card revealed, which is a 0-cost frost spell that requires 2 frost runes, refresh 2 mana crystals. Again, technically more mana cheat that makes cards like the other direct damage that we've seen so far for Frost even more broken, and we are going to be seeing even more direct damage in the next card revealed that doesn't even require any types of runes, which is Icy Touch. Icy Touch does 2 damage to an enemy and freezes it. Really good as a control tool that even Blood DK can have access to because it doesn't require any runes. Going to be really annoying if you have ways to generate additional copies of this and a lot of spell damage, but we haven't seen any spell damage printed in a long time at this point. I think Stormwind was the last time we saw some spell damage actually be printed. I could be wrong, but honestly, Frost DK looks like a really, really fun combo deck, at least for me, to try to play out and make it work. Lord Marrowgar is the next card revealed, which is supposedly the big payoff for Unholy DK since it requires 3 Unholy runes. He is a 8-cost minion with 9 attack, 7 HP, has the undead tag, battlecry, raise all your corpses as 1/1 golems with Rush. For each that can't fit, give one +2/+2. Basically, Kelt the Zod, but for Death Knights. A little bit slower, though I do think this could get incredibly big, incredibly fast, especially because we haven't really seen any corpse synergy with Unholy DKs outside of the ability to actually generate the. And now for the next card, which is Obliterate, which is a 2-cost Blood Rune 1 required spell that destroys a minion. Your hero takes damage equal to its health. Now, this is a card that should be a Frost card and not a Blood card, because Obliterate is one of the key rotational abilities for Frost DKs and not Blood DKs, so it's kind of interesting that they gave it to Blood instead of Frost. It does fit a lot better in the Blood theme, I would say, for its ability, and it does require you to take some damage, which means it is a reference to the old Death Knight cards that would randomly generate off of the Lich King and other cards like him. And honestly, it's probably the best removal tool that we've ever gotten for 2 mana in the entire game, so I can't see a world where this doesn't see play in a Blood DK deck. It does require you to take a little bit of damage, and is a little bit of a worse top deck than some other cards. But if you have a lot of HP, like Blood seems to be going for, then this card won't have that big of a downside. And now for the last Death Knight card revealed today, which is Overseer Brigidara. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but we'll go with it. She is a 6-cost minion with 5 attack, 6 HP, battlecry, draw 2 spells. If they're both Frost, deal 2 damage to all enemies. So it is a little bit of a AoE removal tool for Frost DKs, thus allowing you to actually have some way to actually deal with your opponent's board, though I do think this costs a little bit too much to see a lot of play. I do think if you are trying for a pure Frost build, this is probably going to be a card that you really want to use. But outside of those builds, I don't know how strong this is going to be without seeing a lot of the other Frost synergy that isn't just A, direct damage, or B, mana cheat for spells. Alright, so those were all the Death Knight cards. Let me know down below what of the 3 archetypes of Death Knights that you're most looking forward to. And like always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time, bye bye.